The palace servants whispered her name in hushed voices. The nobles sneered when she passed. To them, Muna was nothing, a lowly maid with no family, no status, and no power. But when she sang, even the wildest beasts bowed before her. She never wanted the king's attention. She never asked to be his favored consort. Yet, when he chose her over the noble maidens, their jealousy turned to rage. One night, they struck. They silenced her forever. They thought they had won. They had no idea what they had done. Because Muna was no ordinary woman. She was something ancient. Something powerful. Something the ocean itself had been waiting for. And when they stole her voice, the sea woke up. Winds howled. Tides rose. And ghostly figures began to rise from the depths. This is the story of how the nobles of Numaja learned a terrible truth. Sometimes, the quietest girl in the room is the one you should fear the most. Before we dive deeper into this epic tale, we'd love to know where you are watching from. Tell us in the comments. And if you love high-stakes fantasy filled with mermaids, magic, love, and sacrifice, don't just watch, be part of our adventure. Like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, we've got an extra special story lined up for you, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. In the kingdom of Numaja, where the golden sands met the whispering waves, there was a servant girl named Muna. She was no noble. No warrior. No queen. Just a girl who scrubbed the palace floors and carried baskets of fruit on her head. Yet, when Muna sang, even the wind seemed to pause and listen. Her voice was like the waves at sunrise, soft, strong, endless. Birds perched on the palace walls just to hear her melody. Wild horses, known to kick and neigh, stood still, their ears twitching to the sound. Even the great elephants that roamed the king's land swayed their mighty trunks when Muna's song filled the air. But no one truly noticed her. Not the noble maidens, who wore golden anklets and walked with pride. Not the warriors, whose spears gleamed in the sun. Not the great King Dama, ruler of Numaja, whose palace stretched high like a mountain. At least, not yet. One day, as Muna washed clothes by the river, she let her voice rise like the morning mist. She sang of the sea, of lost love, of longing. She did not know that, high above, standing on his palace balcony, King Dama listened. He was a man of power, feared by his enemies, respected by his people. Yet, at that moment, his heart pounded like a boy hearing his first lullaby. "Who sings like that?" he asked his guards. The warriors looked at one another, unsure. "A servant girl, my king," one answered. "She is called Muna." The king frowned. A servant girl? How could a mere servant have a voice that stirred his very soul? That night, King Dama could not sleep. The song haunted him, floating through his dreams like a spirit. By morning, he made a decision. "Muna," he declared, "shall sing before me." And so, the wheels of fate turned. Muna had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Nor did she know that the song in her heart held a secret older than the kingdom itself. Muna had spent her life in the shadows of the great palace of Numaja. She scrubbed floors, carried baskets, and washed clothes by the river. She was unseen, unheard, except for her voice. But never had she imagined that her voice would reach the ears of the king himself. The news arrived in the late morning, carried by a warrior clad in bronze armor. He strode through the servant quarters, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd. "You, girl," he called, pointing at Muna. She froze, her hands still dripping with soapy water. Around her, the other servants stopped their work, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. "Yes, my lord," she said softly. "The king has summoned you," the warrior announced. "Come at once." Muna's heart pounded. The king? Summoning her? What could he possibly want with a servant? Had she done something wrong? The other servants whispered among themselves. Some looked at her with envy, others with concern. "Go, child," said old Mama Kia, the head of the servants. Her wrinkled face was kind, but her voice carried warning. "When the king calls, you must obey." Muna wiped her hands on her cloth, took a deep breath, and followed the warrior through the winding halls of the palace. The Golden Throne. The palace of Numaja was the grandest in all the land. Its walls were carved with the stories of kings and warriors. Golden lanterns hung from the high ceilings, casting a warm glow. The scent of incense filled the air. At the center of the great hall sat King Dama. He was a powerful man, his skin dark as the earth, his robes embroidered with the symbols of his ancestors. On his head rested a crown of ivory and gold. Beside him sat his advisors and noble maidens, their eyes sharp with curiosity and jealousy. Muna stepped forward, her bare feet cold against the marble floor. She dared not raise her eyes. "This is the girl?" the king asked, studying her. "Yes, my king," said the warrior. Muna's heart raced. Would he punish her for singing in the river? Would he banish her for distracting him? But then, the king did something unexpected. He smiled. "I have never heard a voice like yours," he said. "Sing for me, Muna." A hush fell over the hall. The noble maidens exchanged glances, their lips curling in disdain. A mere servant, singing before the king. Muna swallowed hard. Her voice had always been her comfort, her escape. But never had she sung before royalty. Still, she knew she had no choice. She took a deep breath and let her song flow. The sound filled the grand hall, wrapping around the pillars, dancing through the golden lanterns. It was soft at first, like the waves at dawn. Then it rose, strong and clear, like the wind through the trees. The nobles sat in stunned silence. The warrior shifted in awe. Even the flames in the lantern seemed to flicker in rhythm with her voice. King Dama leaned forward, his eyes locked on her. Muna did not notice how the world around her had faded. She did not see the noble maidens clenching their fists, their jealousy burning. She did not see the way the king's heart was being pulled toward her, as if caught in an unseen current. She only sang. And somewhere, deep beneath the sea, something stirred. A dangerous favor. When Muna finished, silence filled the hall. Then, the king stood. "You shall no longer be a mere servant," he declared. "From this day forward, you will live in the palace as my favored consort." A gasp swept through the room. The noble maidens stiffened. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Muna's own breath caught in her throat. The king's consort? But, how? Why? The king had spoken. His word was law. But as the noble maidens lowered their eyes, their lips curled into knowing smirks. Muna may have won the king's favor. But she had also made powerful enemies. Muna sat in her new chambers, her heart pounding in her chest. Gone were the cold stone floors of the servant quarters. Now, she was surrounded by silk cushions, golden lamps, and perfumed air. Yet, the warmth of the palace could not melt the fear in her bones. She was the king's favored consort now. A position of honor. A position of power. But power came with enemies. Across the palace, in a chamber filled with silk and jealousy, a group of noble maidens gathered. They were the daughters of chiefs and warriors, the finest women in the land. Women who had been raised to believe they would be chosen by the king. Yet he had chosen a servant. "I will not stand for this," hissed Lady Ebel, the most beautiful and cunning among them. Her gold bangles jingled as she clenched her fists. "A mere girl from the servant quarters. A nobody. She sings like a spirit," whispered one of the maidens. Even the king could not resist. Ebel's eyes darkened. "Then we shall silence her." The noble maidens exchanged glances. They had seen what Muna's voice could do. It was no ordinary gift. It was dangerous. And if the king would not see that, then they would make sure he never heard it again. The night was heavy with moonlight. A cool breeze whispered through the palace halls. Muna lay on her soft bed, staring at the ceiling. She should have been happy. She should have felt safe. But something felt wrong. A shadow passed outside her door. Then another. The air grew thick with silence. Before Muna could rise, the door burst open. A group of noble maidens stormed in, their silk robes flowing like spirits in the dark. Muna gasped. "What are you?" Strong hands grabbed her. She struggled, but they held her down. "You think you are better than us?" Ebel sneered, her eyes burning with fury. "You are nothing but a servant pretending to be a queen." Muna's heart pounded. She tried to scream, but a hand covered her mouth. "You sing too much," Ebel whispered. "Tonight, you will sing no more." A flash of silver. A knife gleaming in the moonlight. Pain. Burning, searing pain. Muna's body jerked as her own blood filled her mouth. Her hands clawed at her throat, but it was too late. Her voice, her gift, was gone. She crumpled to the floor, choking on silent screams. The noble maidens stepped back, their faces pale, their hands shaking. Then, the wind changed. A deep rumble shook the palace. Outside, the ocean roared. The air grew heavy, thick with something ancient. The noble maidens froze. Something had awakened. Something angry. Ebel grabbed the others. "Come. Before we are caught." Their feet pounded against the stone as they fled, leaving Muna in a pool of silence and pain. And outside, the sea began to rise. The palace of Numaja slept, unaware that something had shifted. The stars still glittered in the sky, and the torches still burned along the palace walls. But beneath the earth, beneath the waves, something ancient stirred. The ocean, which had always been calm under the rule of King Dama, rose in fury. The tides swelled unnaturally, creeping up the shores of the kingdom. The fishermen, who had set out to sea, found their boats tossed like leaves in a storm. The great river that ran through Numaja turned wild, its waters surging and flooding the lower streets. Animals howled. Birds took flight in the dead of night. And deep within the palace, Muna lay motionless. Blood stained her lips. Her throat burned, but no sound came. She tried to scream, to cry, but there was nothing. She was silent. The pain was unbearable, but worse than the pain was the emptiness. Her song was gone. Her power was gone. And with it, the sea wept for her loss. The king's nightmare. In his chamber, King Dama tossed and turned in his sleep. A voice echoed through his dreams, not a song, but a cry. A wail so sorrowful that it sent chills down his spine. He saw the ocean rising, waves higher than the tallest palm trees, swallowing the kingdom whole. He saw figures in the water, women with shimmering tails and hollow, ghostly eyes. And then he saw Muna, standing at the edge of the sea, her hands outstretched, her lips moving, yet no sound came. The mermaids behind her whispered in a language older than time. Justice. Vengeance. Blood must pay for blood. The king gasped awake, sweat dripping from his brow. His heart pounded as he sat up. The dream had felt too real. Then, he heard it. A distant rumble. The sound of waves crashing against the palace walls. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, the palace awoke to chaos. The servants whispered of a storm unlike any before. The guards spoke of ghostly shapes in the water. The nobles muttered among themselves, uneasy. Then came the news that shook the kingdom. Muna had been attacked. The royal healers found her just before sunrise, lying cold on the floor of her chambers, her throat covered in blood. She had no wounds on her body, yet she was broken. And worst of all, she could no longer speak. The king was furious. "Who did this?" he demanded, his voice shaking the walls of the throne room. The nobles lowered their heads. The warriors remained silent. But the noble maidens, Ebel and her followers, stood still, their faces unreadable. No one spoke. No one confessed. And Muna, who could have named her attackers, could say nothing at all. She lowered her gaze, her heart heavy. The king turned to his advisors. "Find the ones responsible. If this is a curse, summon the seers." But deep inside, he knew. This was no ordinary act of jealousy. This was something far more dangerous. As the storm raged outside, the words from his nightmare haunted him. Blood must pay for blood. 3 days passed. The sea did not calm. The storm did not fade. The people of Numaja grew afraid. Then, on the 4th night, an old seer arrived at the palace. Her skin was as wrinkled as tree bark. Her eyes, clouded like mist. She walked with a staff made of coral and seashells. She did not wait to be summoned. She entered the great hall as if she had been expected. "King Dama," she said, her voice rough as the wind. "The ocean has sent me." The nobles gasped. The warriors stood alert. But the king simply nodded. He had known this moment would come. The seer turned to Muna, who sat quietly beside the royal healers. She studied the girl's face, the silent pain in her eyes, the weight of something ancient pressing against her spirit. "You were never meant to walk among men," the seer whispered. Muna's eyes widened. "You are of the sea." Gasps rippled through the hall. The nobles exchanged frantic glances. The seer lifted a hand, and suddenly, the torches in the hall flickered, as if responding to unseen winds. "Long ago," she continued, "a siren was cursed to live on land, doomed to wander until she found true love." Her gaze darkened. "That siren was you." Muna trembled. She had always felt different. Always felt drawn to the ocean. But she had never known the truth. The seer's voice grew heavier. "The sea allowed you to stay as long as your song remained. But now, it has been stolen from you. And the ocean wants justice." The nobles stiffened. The warriors exchanged glances. The king clenched his jaw. "What must be done?" he asked. The seer closed her eyes. The air around her seemed to shimmer. "There is only one way to restore balance," she said. "Muna's voice can return, but it requires a sacrifice." Silence fell over the hall. Muna's breath caught in her throat. "A sacrifice?" The seer turned to her. "You must choose, child. To take back your voice, a life must be given." Muna's hands trembled. "The ocean demands blood." She could not breathe. The seer's gaze bore into her, unyielding. "You must decide," she said. "Will you take the king's life to restore your voice?" Muna's heart stopped. The king's life. The man who had lifted her from the dust, who had given her a place in his palace, who had fought to protect her. Would she take his life to reclaim what was stolen? Or would she find another way? The winds howled outside. The waves crashed against the walls. The kingdom held its breath. And Muna's choice would decide the fate of them all. The palace was silent, yet the storm outside raged louder than ever. The waves clawed at the shores, thunder growled in the heavens, and the wind howled like a mourning spirit. It was as if the sea itself was waiting for Muna's answer. Muna sat frozen. Her heart pounded as the seer's words echoed in her mind. "Will you take the king's life to restore your voice?" She looked at King Dama. His dark eyes studied her, calm yet searching. She wanted to speak, to tell him she would never harm him. But no words came. The pain of her stolen voice cut through her like a blade. She had lost her gift, the one thing that had made her special, the one thing that had tied her to the sea. Without it, she was empty, lost. But to take a life? Her hands trembled. She was no murderer. And yet, the sea did not care for innocence. It cared only for balance. The seer stepped closer. The ocean will not wait forever, child. If justice is not served, the storm will not end. Numaja will drown. Gasps filled the hall. The nobles whispered in fear. The king did not flinch. Instead, he rose to his feet and took a slow step toward Muna. If my life will bring peace, then I will not fight it, he said. Muna's eyes widened. She shook her head, tears filling her gaze. No. She would not kill him. She could not. There had to be another way. She turned to the seer, desperation in her eyes. She clasped her hands together as if begging. Please. There must be another way. The seer studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed, her misty eyes glinting with something unreadable. There is another way, she said at last. Muna's heart leapt. But the seer's next words sent a shiver through her bones. You must return to the sea and claim justice yourself. The words hung in the air like an unbroken spell. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. The warriors tightened their grips on their spears. Return to the sea. Muna had spent her life on land, knowing nothing of the world beneath the waves. And now, the seer was telling her to go back, to a place she had never truly known. But what choice did she have? She turned to the king. His gaze was steady, but behind his strong expression, she saw something else, fear for her. He wanted to stop her. But this was not his battle. It was hers. The seer placed a hand on Muna's shoulder. The sea has been wronged. It calls for you. Go to the waters at midnight. There, you will find your answer. Muna swallowed hard. The thought of returning to the ocean sent a deep ache through her heart. Would it welcome her back, or would it swallow her whole? And what kind of justice was she meant to bring? She did not know. But she had to find out. The kingdom of Numaja held its breath as the night fell. Muna stood at the edge of the sea, the waves licking at her feet like an old friend that barely remembered her. The sky was dark, the storm clouds heavy with unfallen rain. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the distant echoes of a song she could no longer sing. Behind her, the king stood at a distance, watching. He had not tried to stop her. Instead, he had simply said, "Come back to me." Now, as Muna faced the endless waters, she wondered if she ever could. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. The water rose to meet her. And as she sank beneath the waves, she knew, her fate was no longer tied to the land. She was returning home. To the ocean. To the truth. To justice. The ocean swallowed Muna whole. Cold. Endless. Powerful. The moment her body touched the water, something awakened inside her. It was as if invisible hands reached for her, pulling her deeper, welcoming her back. Her human legs felt heavy, useless against the currents. But she did not fight. She let the sea take her. Down. Down. Deeper still. The water was dark, but she could feel it, the presence of something ancient watching her. Then, a soft glow filled the deep. Muna's breath caught in her throat, if she still breathed at all. Before her stood a figure, shimmering like moonlight on water. Her skin was the color of the sea at dusk, her hair flowing like living waves. And her eyes, they were the same as Muna's. A voice, clear as a bell, rang through the water. "Sister." Muna's heart pounded. "Sister." Before she could react, more figures emerged from the darkness. Dozens of them. Their tails flickered like silver lightning, their eyes glowing with the power of the ocean itself. They were sirens. And they had been waiting for her. Muna wanted to speak, but still, no words came. Her throat ached from where her voice had been stolen. The siren who had called her sister swam closer. "You have returned to us at last," she said, her voice rich like the rolling tides. "But you are broken." Muna clenched her fists. Yes. She was broken. Her voice, the very thing that connected her to the ocean, had been ripped away. The siren touched Muna's face gently, sadness flickering in her glowing eyes. "Your song was stolen by those who wish to silence you. The land has taken much from us, sister. But the sea." She turned to the deep, where the ocean trembled with unspoken fury. "The sea does not forgive." A low hum filled the water. The other sirens began to sway, their voices rising in an eerie, mournful song. Muna felt it in her bones. The ocean's rage. The storm above had not been a warning. It had been a promise. The land had wronged one of its own. And now, the ocean would claim its due. Unless Muna stopped it. The lead siren, Muna's sister, though she did not yet know her name, took her hands. "There is only one way to restore what was taken," she said. "The land must pay in blood." Muna's stomach twisted. They wanted her to destroy Numaja. To drown the palace. To pull the nobles, the same ones who had mocked her, attacked her, into the depths where they would never return. It would be easy. A single song from the sirens could bring the waves crashing down upon the kingdom. But Muna hesitated. The nobles had stolen her voice. But not everyone in Numaja was cruel. Not the healers who had cared for her wounds. Not the servants who had whispered kind words when no one was looking. And not the king. She thought of Dama's face. The way he had lifted her from the dust. The way he had looked at her when she had lost her voice, not with disappointment, but with pain, as if he had lost something too. He had not been the one to hurt her. And yet, the ocean demanded justice. The sirens were watching. Waiting. Would she choose vengeance? Or was there another way? The tides rose higher. The sea whispered her name. Muna clenched her fists. She had made her decision. And the ocean would listen. Muna looked at the sirens around her, their glowing eyes filled with rage and sorrow. The ocean churned with their fury, waves rising higher and higher, eager to strike. But inside Muna, a quiet voice, not one of words, but of feeling, told her this was not the answer. She shook her head. The lead siren narrowed her eyes. "You refuse justice." Muna hesitated, then pointed to herself, then to her throat, then to the sea. "There must be another way." The sirens murmured, their voices rolling like waves. The lead siren frowned. "What do you suggest, sister?" Muna did not know. She had no voice to speak, no way to explain. But deep in her heart, she felt the truth. Vengeance would not heal her. Vengeance would not return her song. It would only drown her in sorrow. The ocean trembled, waiting. Would it accept her choice? Or would it force her hand? A deep rumble shook the waters. The sirens gasped, looking toward the darkness of the ocean's depths. A great force was stirring. Then, a voice, not from the sirens, not from the waves, but from the ocean itself, rose in the deep. Blood must pay for blood. A powerful current surged forward, wrapping around Muna like chains. Her heart pounded. The sea was angry. It did not care for mercy. It had waited too long. Muna struggled against the current, her lungs tightening. She had refused vengeance, and now the ocean was turning against her. The sirens backed away, their eyes filled with something she had never seen before. Fear. Even they did not dare to challenge the sea's fury. Muna reached out, her mind racing. She had to do something, but what? The ocean roared around her. The waves above rose higher, ready to crash down upon Numaja. Time was running out. She had to act. Now. The water tightened around Muna like a great hand, squeezing, pulling her deeper. The voice of the ocean boomed once more. You deny justice. You deny the balance. Muna shook her head, her hands pressing against the currents that tried to pull her down. She was not denying justice, she was seeking a different path. She pointed to her throat, then to the swirling waters around her. She had already lost so much. Must more suffering follow? The sea rumbled, unimpressed. The land has wronged you, daughter of the deep. Your voice was stolen. Your song was silenced. What will you give in return? Muna froze. She had already refused to take the king's life. Now, the ocean demanded something else. A sacrifice. Her body trembled. What else could she give? Then, she felt a presence behind her. The lead siren, her unknown sister, swam closer, her expression grim. There is a way to satisfy the ocean without blood, she whispered. Muna turned to her, desperate for an answer. The siren's glowing gaze held sorrow, but also hope. You must offer a piece of yourself. Something that can never be taken back. Muna's heart pounded. What did she mean? The siren touched Muna's chest, right over her heart. Give the sea your memories of love. Muna gasped, shaking her head. Her memories? Of Dama? Of the moments they had shared? His laughter, his kindness, the way he had looked at her with warmth when all others had scorned her. Could she truly give that up? The siren's voice was gentle but firm. The sea will not take your life, but it will take what is most precious to you. If you choose this path, you will return to the land, and the ocean will be at peace. But you will no longer remember love. Muna clutched her chest, her heart aching. She had already lost her voice. And now, to save Numaja, to stop the storm, she would have to lose him. She turned toward the surface, where the waves crashed angrily. She could almost see the palace, see the torches burning in the night, see the king standing at the shore, waiting for a return. If she did this, she would go back to him, but she would no longer remember why she loved him. Would he still look at her the same way? Would she even care? Her hands trembled. The sea waited. The storm raged. The kingdom's fate hung in the balance. Muna took a deep breath. And she made her choice. Muna closed her eyes, her heart pounding against her chest. The ocean's demand echoed through the water, her memories of love, in exchange for Numaja's safety. Could she do it? Would she truly trade away every moment, the warmth of Dama's arms, the way he had fought for her, the way his eyes had shone when she sang? Tears welled in her eyes, vanishing into the sea. She had no voice to answer, but she didn't need one. With a slow nod, she gave her consent. The lead siren placed a hand over Muna's heart, her expression filled with sorrow. The sea accepts your sacrifice. At once, a sharp pain spread through Muna's chest, like invisible fingers reaching inside her. She gasped, clutching at the spot where her heart burned. Memories rushed past her, images of Dama laughing, holding her close, whispering her name. Then, like waves retreating from the shore, they faded. The pain dulled. The storm above stopped. The ocean, once raging with fury, fell into eerie silence. The towering waves stilled. The howling wind softened into a gentle breeze. The storm had passed. But something inside Muna was gone. She blinked, staring at the siren before her. She had made a sacrifice, hadn't she? But what had she lost? Her mind felt hollow, as if something had been stripped away, leaving only emptiness. The siren took her hands, her voice a whisper. It is done. You may return to the land. Muna hesitated, but she felt the pull of the surface. She obeyed. As she rose toward the land, she did not see the sadness in her sister's eyes. She did not hear the ocean whisper, she will never remember love again. Muna's feet touched the shore, the wet sand clinging to her skin. The moment she stood, strong arms caught her. She flinched. Dark eyes stared into hers, warm, searching, filled with relief. "Muna," the men breathed. "You came back." She frowned, tilting her head. Who was this? His hands trembled as he held her, his gaze desperate, as if waiting for something. "Muna, say something," he pleaded. "Please." Her throat ached. No words came. And something else was wrong. She should have felt something: joy, love, familiarity. But there was only nothing. Muna pulled away, staring at him in confusion. "Don't you know me?" he whispered. She shook her head. The men, the king, staggered back as if struck. Muna could not understand the pain in his eyes. She did not remember why it was there. The ocean had taken her memories. And now, standing before the men she once loved, she only saw a stranger. The king stood frozen, staring at Muna as if the world had shattered around him. She had returned. He had prayed for this moment, begged the gods to bring her back to him. But now, she did not know him. Dama's voice trembled. "Muna, it's me. Dama." She blinked, tilting her head slightly. His name should have meant something. It should have sparked warmth, a memory, anything. But inside her, there was only silence. Muna touched her throat, then shook her head, her face calm, expressionless. She did not know this man. And worse, she did not care. Dama's heart twisted. She had once looked at him with so much love, so much trust. Now, her gaze was empty. He reached for her hand, gently, as if afraid she might disappear again. "Come," he whispered. "You are safe now." Muna hesitated. But there was no ocean to return to. No storm to pull her away. So she followed him. But as they walked back to the palace, Dama knew this was not the same woman he had fallen in love with. And he feared that the woman he loved was lost forever. The palace should have rejoiced at Muna's return. Instead, it felt as if a shadow had fallen over the golden halls. The servants whispered as they watched her pass, their eyes filled with pity and confusion. The nobles, those who had once despised her, stood in stunned silence. How had she survived? Why had the sea spared her? And why did she now walk the halls without a single spark of love for the king who had defied them all for her? Lady Ebel, one of the noblewomen who had tormented her the most, narrowed her eyes. "There is something wrong with her," she whispered to another noble. The others nodded. And slowly, a dangerous idea formed among them. Muna had returned, but was she truly still one of them? Or had the ocean sent something else in her place? Muna sat in the royal chambers, staring at the golden embroidery of the silk curtains. She had been here before, hadn't she? Her fingers trailed over the soft fabric, but no memories came. There was no warmth. No familiarity. Nothing. A deep sigh came from behind her. She turned. Dama stood in the doorway, watching her with an expression she could not name. It was heavy, tired. "Muna," he said softly. She tilted her head. "Do you truly not remember?" She shook her head. His jaw clenched, and he took a slow step toward her. "Not even the night in the gardens? Not the songs you used to sing? Not the way you—" He stopped himself, swallowing hard. Muna did not move. She should have felt something at his sorrow. Shouldn't she? But all she felt was emptiness. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words barely forming on her lips. Dama's hands curled into fists at his sides. "No," he said. "I don't accept this." Muna blinked. He knelt before her, his eyes filled with desperation. "I will make you remember," he said. "I will bring you back. She simply stared. Could he? Could love be restored once it was erased? Outside the chamber doors, noble ears listened. And the whispers spread. The king has brought back a cursed woman. She is no longer his Muna. The sea should have taken her. And deep beneath the palace, in the depths where the ocean's fury still stirred, the sea whispered back. She is not done yet. The palace was silent, but the air was thick with unspoken fears. Dama had locked himself away with Muna, refusing to let go of the woman he loved, even if she no longer remembered him. Yet outside, the nobles gathered like vultures, whispering in shadowed corridors. She is not the same. She is cursed. She is dangerous. Lady Ebel, the one who had once tormented Muna the most, stepped forward in the candlelit chamber where the nobles gathered. Her voice was smooth, but her eyes gleamed with quiet malice. The king is blinded by his love for a woman who no longer exists, she murmured. The nobles nodded, their faces grim. She was touched by the sea, one of them said. And no one returns from the depths unchanged. Lady Ebel tilted her head. If the king cannot see the truth, then it is our duty to act. The nobles murmured in agreement. Muna had survived the ocean's wrath, but would she survive what was to come? Dama sat beside Muna in the quiet chamber, watching her closely. She was the same woman, yet a stranger. She looked like his Muna, moved like her, breathed the same air. But her eyes, those eyes that had once held love for him, were empty. She did not look at him with hatred. But she did not look at him with love, either. Dama's heart twisted. I don't know what happened to you, he said softly. I don't know what the ocean took. Muna tilted her head, studying him as if trying to piece together a puzzle. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her body did not flinch from his touch. But neither did she lean into it. Dama swallowed hard. I will not give up on you, he whispered. Muna simply blinked, saying nothing. Outside, the palace walls whispered. Not all were willing to wait for the king's love to bring her back. Some would rather see her gone. The night was cold, the palace quiet. Muna lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She could not sleep. Something was missing. Or was it someone? Her mind was full of holes, pieces of memories that refused to come together. She had been loved. She had been treasured. But by whom? A soft sound made her sit up. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. She turned toward the doorway just as the shadows shifted. A figure stepped forward, their face hidden in the dim torchlight. Muna's breath caught. She did not know them. But something in their presence felt wrong. Then, she saw the knife gleaming in their hand. Before she could react, the figure lunged. And the world turned to chaos. Muna's body reacted before her mind could process the danger. She threw herself to the side just as the blade slashed through the air, barely missing her. The assassin snarled, their face still hidden beneath the dark hood. Muna scrambled backward, her heart pounding. She had no voice to scream for help, no way to call for the king. But she was not weak. She grabbed a nearby bronze tray from a table and hurled it at her attacker. The tray struck them in the chest, causing them to stumble. Muna wasted no time. She dashed toward the door. Another shadow moved. There was more than one assassin. A second figure stepped into the room, blocking her path. Muna's breath caught as she recognized Lady Ebel. The noblewoman smirked, tilting her head as if examining a fragile creature before crushing it beneath her heel. You should not have come back, Ebel whispered. Muna clenched her fists. She did not know what she had done to deserve this woman's hatred, but something deep inside her stirred, a memory too faint to grasp. The first assassin lunged again. Muna twisted away, but this time, the knife caught her shoulder. Pain flared through her body. She stumbled, her legs growing weak. Ebel sighed. A pity, she murmured. But it is time to finish this. She raised her hand. The doors burst open. Step away from her. Dama. His voice was thunder, his rage a storm. He moved like lightning, his blade flashing in the dim light. The assassins turned, but they were no match for a king trained for war. With one strike, Dama disarmed the first assassin, sending them crashing into the wall. Ebel stepped back, her face pale. "Why, Your Majesty, I..." Dama did not hesitate. His fist connected with her jaw, sending her to the ground. The guards stormed in behind him, seizing the fallen assassins. But Dama had no eyes for them. He rushed to Muna, catching her as she swayed on her feet. "Muna," he whispered, his hands trembling as he held her. His fingers brushed against the wound on her shoulder, his expression darkening. Muna looked up at him, her lips parting as if to speak. But no words came. Only silence. And a single tear that slipped down her cheek. Dama pulled her close, his voice fierce. "I will never let them take you from me again." The morning sun rose over Numaja, but the air was heavy with whispers of betrayal. Dama stood before the nobles, his presence like a blade ready to strike. At his feet, Lady Ebel knelt, her wrists bound in chains. "You tried to take her life," Dama said, his voice cold. "You betrayed your king." Ebel trembled, but her pride did not break. "She is cursed," she spat. "She is not the same Muna you once loved." Dama's jaw clenched. "She is still my Muna." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. One of them stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, we acted out of fear." Dama's eyes burned. "You acted out of hatred." Silence fell. Then, the king turned to his guards. "Lady Ebel and all those who conspired with her shall be stripped of their titles and exiled from Numaja. Their wealth shall be given to those they have wronged." Ebel's eyes widened in horror. "You cannot." Dama raised a hand, silencing her. "I am the king." With that, he turned away. The nobles watched in stunned silence as their former leader was dragged away. Justice had been served. But the kingdom's greatest battle was not over yet. For Muna was still a woman without her memories. And the ocean was not finished with her. Muna sat by the palace window, watching the waves. Something deep inside her ached. She had survived. Dama had saved her. But why did she still feel so empty? The wind whispered against her skin, carrying with it a distant melody. A song. A song she should have known. Muna closed her eyes. And for the first time since she had lost her memories, she began to hum. The sound was faint, broken, but it was there. The ocean stirred. The sirens beneath the waves turned their heads, sensing something shift. Muna was remembering. But would it be enough? Or was the ocean calling her home? The soft hum trembled on Muna's lips, barely more than a whisper. Yet, the moment the sound escaped her, the air in the palace shifted. A shudder ran through the walls. The torches flickered. The ocean, distant yet ever-present, seemed to breathe. Dama, standing in the doorway, froze. He had not heard that sound in so long. Her song. It was broken, quiet, just a piece of what it once was. But it was there. A flicker of hope ignited in his chest. "Muna," he whispered. She turned, her eyes unfocused, as if lost in a dream. She did not seem to hear him. The melody continued, haunting and beautiful. And then, the ocean answered. A wind howled through the open balcony, carrying the scent of salt and storm. Far below, the waves crashed against the cliffs, rising higher, as if reaching for her. A deep, eerie hum rumbled through the air. Other voices. Sirens. Calling to their lost sister. Muna gasped, clutching her head as pain shot through her skull. Memories. Flashes of the sea, of silver fins slicing through dark waters. Of laughter, of sorrow, of love. She staggered back. Dama was there in an instant, catching her before she could fall. Muna. Look at me. His hands cupped her face, his eyes desperate. She blinked, trembling. And then, she spoke. I remember the ocean. Dama's heart pounded. Do you remember me? Muna's lips parted. But before she could answer, the palace trembled. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed from the sea. She has begun to remember. And now, the choice must be made. The palace erupted into chaos. Servants ran through the halls, shouting of an approaching storm. The wind howled through the windows, rattling doors and shaking walls. But the real storm was inside Muna. She clutched her chest as memories surged through her mind, filling in the empty spaces. Her voice. Her curse. Her love. She looked up at Dama, and this time, she knew him. Her king. Her heart. Tears welled in her eyes, but before she could speak, the ocean roared louder, demanding her attention. A shadow moved beyond the waves. A figure. No, figures. Mermaids. Their eyes glowed like stars, their forms swaying in the restless tide. The one at the center, a towering being with skin as dark as midnight and hair flowing like ink in the water, raised a hand. Muna, daughter of the sea. The voice vibrated through her bones. You have found love. But your song remains lost. The ocean has waited long enough. Muna's breath hitched. The storm grew stronger. Dama pulled her close, his grip firm. What do they mean? Muna swallowed hard. She knew what they meant. Her curse had always been clear, she could only reclaim her voice through a sacrifice. And now, the sea had come to collect. The choice loomed before her, heavier than the waves crashing below. Would she take the life of the men she loved to restore her song? Or would she find another way, before the ocean drowned them all? The sea's whispers grew louder, wrapping around Muna like invisible chains. A sacrifice must be made, the ocean spirits murmured. The storm churned, waves rising higher, threatening to swallow the palace whole. Muna clutched her chest, her breath coming in short gasps. She had longed for her voice, for her song, for her identity, but not like this. Not at the cost of the only person who had ever loved her. Dama tightened his grip on her hand. Whatever they want, you don't have to give it to them, he said firmly. I won't let them take you. Muna's heart ached. He did not understand. It was not her they wanted. It was his life. She turned to the water, eyes blazing. No, she cried. I will not harm him. The ocean trembled. The towering mermaid at the center, Nalaya, keeper of the deep, narrowed her glowing eyes. Then the sea will take what is owed another way. She lifted her hand. A monstrous wave surged forward. Muna's breath caught. If that wave struck the palace, it would destroy everything. Dama cursed under his breath, pulling Muna behind him. The guards below shouted in terror. The servants ran for cover. The nobles, once so cruel, were now powerless in the face of the sea's wrath. The ocean was ready to claim them all. Muna's heart pounded. She had to stop this. There had to be another way. She would not let the ocean take Dama. But what if she gave herself instead? The ocean called for blood. But Muna had never been one to follow fate. She stepped forward, her hair whipping around her as the storm roared. I will not kill him, she declared. But I will not let my people suffer, either. Nalaya's gaze darkened. Then what will you offer, daughter of the sea? Muna took a deep breath. Her hands trembled. But her heart was steady. my voice," she whispered. Dama stiffened. "Muna, no." She turned to him, cupping his face with both hands. Tears glistened in her eyes. "I would rather be silent forever than live in a world without you," she said. Dama's throat tightened. The ocean had taken so much from them already. Now, it would take her song too. But she had made her choice. She turned back to the sea, standing tall. "You took my voice once," she called. "Take it again, but leave my love, my home, and my people in peace." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the ocean sighed. Nalaya's gaze softened, the glow in her eyes dimming. "Very well, child." She raised her hand. A sharp, cold wind wrapped around Muna's throat. Pain flashed through her. Then, nothing. The sound of the storm faded. The waves calmed. The mermaids disappeared beneath the surface. The sea had accepted the bargain. Numaja was safe. But Muna. She opened her mouth. No sound came. Her voice was gone. Forever. Dama caught her as she collapsed into his arms. The kingdom was saved. But at what cost? Muna awoke to the gentle warmth of the sun on her face. The storm had passed. The palace still stood. The sea was calm once more. But the weight in her chest told her something was missing. She parted her lips. No sound. Her song, the voice that once tamed beasts, that once made even the ocean listen, was gone. Forever. A deep ache settled in her heart. But then, a familiar hand clasped hers. She turned her head. Dama sat beside her, his dark eyes filled with sorrow. She had saved him. She had saved the kingdom. But at what cost? Muna touched her throat. The pain was gone, but the emptiness remained. Dama watched her, his jaw tightening. "I would have given my life for you," he murmured. "You didn't have to do this." Muna shook her head. He didn't understand. It was never a choice for her. Dama was her heart. Without him, her voice would have meant nothing. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had no voice. But she still had him. And she would not waste the life she had fought for. Dama cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a stray tear. "You are still my Muna," he whispered. "No matter what." Her heart clenched. Would he still say that if he knew the truth? That she was never meant to stay on land? That the ocean's call had not fully disappeared? Because deep inside her, beneath the silence, she could still feel it. A pull. A whisper. The sea was not finished with her yet. Days passed. Numaja celebrated its survival. The nobles, humbled by the power of the ocean, no longer dared to challenge Muna's place by the king's side. But something was wrong. Muna could feel it. At night, she would wake to find her feet wet, as if she had walked into the sea in her sleep. Her dreams were filled with whispers, the voices of sirens. "Come home, sister. You do not belong here. You are still cursed." She tried to ignore them. But then, one morning, she looked in the mirror. And gasped. Her skin was changing. A faint shimmer ran across her arms, like the glisten of fish scales. Her nails had grown sharper. And when she touched her throat, where her voice had once been, she felt a pulse. Like something was still there. Waiting. Fear gripped her. She had thought she had broken the curse. But what if the ocean had lied? What if she was still transforming, slowly, silently, into something no longer human? And what if, one day, she would wake up? Back in the sea. Dama noticed her distress. He watched her carefully, but she could not tell him. Not yet. Not when she did not understand it herself. But deep in her heart, she knew the truth. The ocean had accepted her sacrifice. But it had never let her go. And sooner or later, it would come for her again. Muna stood at the edge of the palace balcony, staring at the sea. It was calm now, its waves lapping gently against the cliffs. But she knew better. The ocean was never truly still. And neither was she. The faint shimmer on her arms had not faded. The whispers in her dreams had not stopped. The sea had given her time, but it had not released her. Her sacrifice had not been enough. She clenched the stone railing, breathing deeply. Dama's voice cut through her thoughts. Muna. She turned to see him standing in the doorway. His dark eyes searched hers. You've been restless. His voice was soft but knowing. Something is wrong. She shook her head quickly, forcing a smile. But he did not look convinced. He stepped closer, brushing his fingers over her arm. His touch was warm, too warm against her skin. She pulled away before he could feel the faint coolness of her flesh, the way it no longer felt entirely human. Dama sighed. I know you miss your voice. Her heart squeezed. If only that were all. If only she were not still changing. If only she could stay with him forever. But she knew. The sea was calling her back. And one day soon, she would have no choice but to answer. That night, sleep did not come easily. Muna tossed and turned, haunted by the whispers in her dreams. Sister, you do not belong in the world of men. Come home before it is too late. She jolted awake, her body drenched in sweat. The room was dark, the only sound the soft rustling of the curtains. She placed a trembling hand on her chest. Her heartbeat was slow, too slow. And her legs. She gasped. Her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, the shimmer more pronounced than before. Her body was still changing. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet touched the cool marble floor. But they felt wrong. Like they were not truly hers. Fear clawed at her throat. She had to stop this. She had to fight it. But how could she fight something that was woven into her very blood? A hand touched her shoulder. She froze. Muna, Dama whispered. What's happening to you? She turned slowly. His eyes, sharp even in the darkness, flickered to her arm, where the shimmer had not yet faded. She sucked in a breath. He had seen it. There was no hiding it anymore. Tears burned in her eyes. She had never wanted him to know. Because now, he would finally understand. She was not meant to stay. And soon, the ocean would take her back. Muna's heart pounded. She could see it in Dama's eyes, fear, confusion, but also something else. Not disgust. Not anger. Something deeper. Muna, he said again, softer this time. Tell me the truth. Her hands trembled. She had spent so long hiding it. So long pretending to be normal. But she wasn't. And now, there was no more hiding. She reached for his hand and guided it to her arm. His fingers brushed over the shimmering skin, the faint, almost invisible scales. Dama's breath hitched. But he did not pull away. Instead, he whispered, How long have you known? Tears welled in her eyes. Always. She had always known she was different. Always felt the ocean's pull. Always feared the day it would come for her. But she had never imagined she would find love on land. Never thought she would have something worth fighting against the sea for. She opened her mouth to answer, but of course, no sound came. The words would not come. Because her voice was gone. She pressed a hand to her throat, frustration burning inside her. She wanted to tell him everything. To make him understand. But all she could do was stare into his eyes and hope he could see the truth in them. And he did. Dama cupped her face gently. "I don't care what you are," he said. "You are still Muna. You are still mine." Her heart squeezed. He was wrong. Because if the sea had its way, she would not be his for much longer. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. The ocean had stopped whispering. The transformation had slowed. But Muna knew this was not mercy. It was waiting. Watching. Choosing the perfect moment to strike. And when it did, she would be powerless to stop it. Dama refused to leave her side. He had ordered the palace healers to find a cure, had sent word to every mystic in the land. But Muna knew the truth. There was no cure. The sea did not make mistakes. And a siren could not escape her fate. One night, as the kingdom slept, she crept to the balcony once more. The ocean stretched before her, endless and dark. She could feel it, calling her. "Come home, sister." Her hands gripped the railing. She had to find a way to stop this. To break the curse before it was too late. Or else, the next time she woke, she might not be in the palace at all. She might be under the waves. And this time, she might never come back. Muna stood on the balcony, staring at the sea. It was quiet tonight, but she could feel it watching her. Waiting. She clutched the railing. She had sacrificed her voice to protect Dama, to save the kingdom, but it was not enough. The ocean still wanted her back. And deep inside, she could feel herself slipping. Her body no longer felt fully human. Her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight. Her legs ached when she walked for too long, as if they were never meant to carry her weight. And worst of all, she could not resist the water. Each night, she woke with her feet wet, standing at the shore, the waves licking at her ankles. One night soon, she feared, she would walk into the water and not return. She had to stop this. She had to find a way to break the curse. But how? She had already given up her voice. What more could she offer? Behind her, she heard footsteps. She turned. Dama. He wore a long robe, his dark hair tousled from sleep. "Muna," he said softly. "I know you're hiding something." She stiffened. He stepped closer. "Please, let me help you." Tears burned in her eyes. She wanted to believe he could. But this was a battle against fate. And fate was not so easily changed. She took his hand, pressing it to her cheek. For a long moment, they stood there in silence. Then, she turned back to the sea. Tomorrow, she would seek out the only one who might have answers. The only one who had ever escaped the ocean's grasp. The old one. A woman who had once been a siren, and had found a way to stay on land. If anyone knew how to stop this curse, it was her. But time was running out. And Muna feared she would not like the price she would have to pay. At dawn, Muna set out. Wrapped in a dark cloak, she slipped through the streets of Numaja, her heart pounding. The old one lived at the edge of the kingdom, in a hut made of driftwood and bones. Some said she was a witch. Others said she was cursed. But Muna did not care. She only cared about surviving. When she reached the hut, she hesitated. The door creaked open before she could knock. A bent figure stood in the shadows. The old one's eyes were clouded with age, but when she looked at Muna, she smiled. "I was wondering when you would come," she rasped. Muna swallowed hard. She stepped inside. The hut smelled of salt and damp earth. Strange charms hung from the ceiling, bones, shells, dried seaweed. The old one gestured for Muna to sit. She obeyed. For a long moment, the old woman simply studied her. Then, she nodded. The sea still owns you. Muna's hands tightened into fists. She nodded. You seek to break the curse, the Old One murmured. To stay with your king. Another nod. The Old One sighed. There is only one way. Muna's heart pounded. What? She mouthed. The Old One leaned closer. To sever your bond with the ocean, she whispered, you must give it something greater than yourself. Muna's blood ran cold. The Old One's cloudy eyes sharpened. You must give it your love. Muna froze. She had already given up her voice. Now, she had to give up Dhamma. No. There had to be another way. There had to be. But the Old One only shook her head. There is no escaping the sea, child. Not without sacrifice. Muna clenched her jaw. She had fought too hard. She would not lose Dhamma. Even if it meant defying the ocean itself. Even if it meant facing the wrath of the sea one last time. Muna's mind reeled. She had expected the Old One to reveal some hidden magic, some lost spell that could save her. But this was impossible. You must give it your love. Muna's fingers trembled as she clutched the fabric of her cloak. She had already lost so much. Her voice. Her freedom. And now the sea wanted the only thing she had left. She shook her head violently. No. The Old One sighed. The ocean does not bargain, child. Muna stared into the woman's clouded eyes, searching for another answer, another way. But there was nothing. Only cold, hard truth. If you do not give it willingly, the Old One murmured, it will take it by force. Muna's heart clenched. Dhamma. Would the ocean try to take him? Would it pull him into the depths, just as it had taken so many before? No. She would not let that happen. There had to be another way. She just had to find it, before it was too late. Muna stood abruptly. The Old One did not stop her. But as Muna turned to leave, the woman's voice echoed behind her. If you fight the sea, be prepared for war. Muna's breath hitched. Then she stepped out into the night. And ran. The sky was dark when Muna returned to the palace. Thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. And it was not ordinary. Muna could feel it in her bones. The ocean was restless. It had waited long enough. Now, it was coming for her. She hurried through the halls, her heart pounding. She had to find Dhamma. She had to warn him. But when she reached his chamber, the door was open. And inside, Dhamma stood by the window, staring out at the sea. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face. His expression was grim. You went to the Old One, he said without turning. Muna froze. He already knew. Slowly, he turned to face her. His gaze searched hers. She told you the truth, didn't she? Muna's throat tightened. She nodded. Dhamma exhaled. And you're thinking of fighting it? She nodded again. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a relieved one. But a determined one. Then we fight. Muna's eyes widened. Dhamma stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. I will not lose you, Muna, he whispered. Not to the sea. Not to fate. Not to anything. Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to believe him. But the storm outside was growing stronger. The ocean was angry. And soon, it would strike. The final battle was about to begin. And Muna did not know if love would be enough to win. The storm arrived at midnight. Winds howled through the palace like the wails of vengeful spirits. Lightning slashed the sky, illuminating the churning sea below. And then the ocean rose. A great wave, taller than the palace walls, surged toward the kingdom, its crest foaming with ghostly light. Muna and Dama stood side by side on the balcony, watching in silent horror. This was no ordinary storm. This was war. The sea had come to reclaim what was its own. And it would not leave empty-handed. A terrible screech filled the air. Muna's breath hitched. From the dark waters, they came. Ghostly figures with long, flowing hair. Eyes like glowing pearls. Lips curled back in eerie smiles. Mermaids. But not like Muna. Not alive. Not whole. These were the spirits of sirens who had failed their purpose. Cursed to serve the ocean forever. Their voices rose in a haunting song. Even without words, Muna could feel its power. It whispered of surrender. Of the sea's embrace. Of the peace that awaited her beneath the waves. For a moment, she felt herself sway. Her feet stepped forward. Toward the railing. Toward the sea. But then, a hand grabbed hers. Dama. His grip was warm, grounding. His eyes, fierce and unyielding, locked onto hers. And just like that, the spell broke. Muna's heart pounded. The sirens screamed in rage. The ocean surged forward. And the battle began. Dama did not hesitate. With a single motion, he unsheathed his sword. His voice rang out over the storm. Protect the palace. Guards rushed to obey. The palace gates groaned under the pressure of the waves, but the warriors of Numaja stood firm. Arrows flew. Spears struck. But the sea's creatures were endless. Dama turned to Muna. Tell me how to stop this. Muna's throat ached. If only she still had her voice. If only she could tell him the truth. That this war was not about the kingdom. Not about the people. It was about her. She was the ocean's price. And until it claimed her, it would never stop. Dama seemed to understand. Because suddenly, he dropped his sword. And took her hands. I would give up my throne for you, he murmured. Muna's eyes widened. The sea shuddered. The mermaid's song faltered. Dama raised his voice, shouting over the storm. I would give up everything, my power, my kingdom, my life, if it meant you would stay. Thunder roared. The waves hesitated. Muna's heart broke. Because she knew. The ocean had been waiting for a sacrifice. And now, it had been offered one. Dama had unknowingly spoken the forbidden words. And the sea was ready to collect. The moment the words left Dama's lips, the ocean shifted. The wind stilled. The waves slowed. And then, a voice rose from the deep. Low. Echoing. As if it had existed since the beginning of time. Your life for hers. Your throne for her freedom. A king's vow cannot be undone. Dama's breath hitched. Muna grabbed his arm, shaking her head wildly. No. Her silent plea burned through her eyes. Do not do this. But the sea had already heard him. The sky darkened. The mermaid stilled, watching, waiting. Dama straightened his shoulders. His grip tightened on Muna's hand. Then, he stepped forward. Muna lunged, trying to pull him back. But an invisible force held her in place. She could not move. She could not scream. All she could do was watch as the sea prepared to take him. The water rose in the shape of a towering figure. A great, faceless being, shifting like the tide. The sea god. You offer yourself, the voice rumbled. Dama did not flinch. I do. Muna's heart shattered. The sea god stretched out a hand of water. The deal was sealed. But just as the waves reached for Dama, a new voice cut through the storm. No. Muna's eyes widened. Because the voice that had spoken was hers. The moment Muna spoke, the entire ocean froze. The sea did not move. The wind did not howl. Even the storm held its breath. Muna's hand flew to her throat. Her voice. It was back. But how? Then she understood. The sea had prepared to take a life. A sacrifice had been made. And in that moment, the ocean had returned what was stolen. Her voice was the price of Dama's life. The sea god turned its shifting form toward her. You reject the offering. Muna lifted her chin. I do. Dama stared at her in shock. Muna's heart pounded, but she did not waver. There must be another way. The sea god was silent. Then, it spoke. Then you must choose, daughter of the deep. The waves rippled. And suddenly, the choice was before her. Two visions. Two futures. One path led to the sea. If she returned to the ocean, the storm would end. Dama would live. The kingdom would be safe. But she would never see the land again. The other path led to the land. She could stay with Dama. She could keep her love, her kingdom, her voice. But the ocean would never stop hunting her. Never stop calling. And one day, it would come again. The choice burned inside her. Stay with her love and fight the sea forever. Or surrender to the waves and save them all. Muna took a shaking breath. And made her choice. Muna's heart pounded like a drum. The sea god's presence loomed before her, vast and unyielding. The weight of the ocean pressed against her chest, demanding her answer. Dama's fingers wrapped around her wrist. His grip was tight, desperate. Don't go, he whispered. His voice was raw, full of emotions he could not put into words. Muna's eyes burned. This was everything she had ever wanted. Love. A home. A place to belong. But the ocean would never stop calling her. It would never let her go. She turned to the sea god. Her voice was steady, but her soul trembled. If I return, will the ocean leave Numaja in peace? The waves shifted. The mermaids hovered in eerie silence. Then, the sea god spoke. If you return, the land will never know the wrath of the sea again. Muna swallowed hard. If she stayed, she would always live in fear. If she left, she would never see Dama again. The ocean waited. Dama waited. Muna took a deep breath. And made her choice. I will return. A sound like 1,000 crashing waves filled the air. The ocean roared in triumph. The storm above broke apart, clouds unraveling like silk. The mermaids began to sing, not a song of war, but one of welcome. Muna turned to Dama. Tears streaked his face. But he did not beg her to stay. He knew. This was the only way. Muna reached up, her fingers brushing against his cheek. I will love you beyond the waves, beyond time, she whispered. Then, before her heart could shatter completely, she stepped into the sea. The moment Muna's foot touched the water, the transformation began. A wave curled around her ankles, pulling her in. Her human skin shimmered, melting away. Scales of deep blue and silver rippled across her body. Her legs fused together, shifting into a long, elegant tail. Her fingers stretched, webbing between them. And her voice. Oh, her voice returned in full. No longer stolen. No longer broken. She sang, and the sea sang with her. The ocean had reclaimed its daughter. The waves wrapped around her, cradling her like a lost child finally home. She turned, one last time, to see Dama. The king she had loved. the men she had left behind. He stood on the shore, unmoving, his eyes filled with unshed tears. The palace behind him stood untouched, safe from the wrath of the sea. Her sacrifice had saved them all. The mermaids circled her, their arms outstretched. "Come, sister." Muna took one last breath of the salty air and dove beneath the waves. Dama did not move for a long time. The sea was calm now, its rage faded. The sky was clear, the stars shining as if nothing had happened. But his heart was gone. Taken by the waves. A gentle breeze carried Muna's song to his ears, a melody only he could hear. She was alive. But she would never return. He clenched his fists, swallowing his sorrow. A king did not weep before his people. But that night, Dama wept alone. The kingdom of Numaja would never forget the woman who had saved them. And the king who had lost her. Far beneath the waves, Muna swam through a world she had almost forgotten. Coral castles stretched toward the surface. Schools of fish darted through glowing tunnels of seaweed. The mermaids around her laughed and danced, welcoming her back. But Muna did not smile. Her heart remained behind, on the shore. Yet, as the ocean currents embraced her, a whisper filled her mind. "This is not the end." Muna's fingers curled. She had obeyed the sea. She had given herself willingly. But fate was not yet finished with her. One day, she would return. One day, she would find a way to walk the land again. For love was stronger than any curse. And the tides would always bring her back. Years passed. The story of Muna, the siren who loved a king, became legend in Numaja. The people spoke of the storm that nearly swallowed the kingdom. They whispered about the mermaid who gave up everything to save them. And they remembered the king who never took another wife, who stood by the shore at night, listening for a song only he could hear. Some say that when the moon is full, her voice still echoes across the waves, calling out to the one she left behind. Some say that one day, the sea will return her to him. But only the ocean knows the truth. And the tides keep their secrets well. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more mesmerizing African folk tales. Your support helps bring these magical stories to life. Tell us in the comments, would you have made the same choice as Muna? Until next time, may the spirits of the ancestors guide you, and may the tides bring you great fortune.